No kid's Jewish education should end at 13. Adjerba offers Ontario high school credits infused with Jewish learning online for teens across the province. Ministry approved, intellectually demanding, Jewishly transformative. Adjerba.ca. Your teen belongs here.
So we're here in a private home. We're visiting two members of the Jewish community, and we have brought them some very needed supplies, including, importantly, light, because as you can see, we're currently in a blackout, as is customary here in Havana. Hours of blackout throughout the day.
De nada.
That's what it sounded like in Havana, Cuba, a few days ago, as cantor Eric Moses from Toronto's Beth Shalom Synagogue delivered some portable electric lanterns and bags of other supplies to two Jewish seniors while the city was in the middle of a big power blackout, par for the course these days in Cuba. Cantor Moses traveled with a Jewish aid mission to Cuba he'd put together, leading 16 members of his congregation. They'd brought 8 extra suitcases filled with bottles of medicine, Hebrew-Spanish prayer books, and also, importantly, batteries. They also carried 8 duffel bags full of baseball equipment, but more about that later. Cuba is struggling even more than usual this month after the U.S. government imposed a ban on shipments of fuel from Venezuela in the wake of the capture of the former Venezuelan dictator Maduro right after New Year's. As a result, the economic situation in Cuba deteriorated so much that last week the Canadian government raised its travel warning for tourists, citing power failures, banking difficulties, and shortages of food, fresh water, and the most basic supplies. The remaining Cuban Jews number about 1,500 people. 5 synagogues, including a Holocaust museum, there's a senior center, and youth programming. There used to be more than 10 times that many Cuban Jews, but after the communist takeover in 1959, 94% of them emigrated to Florida or Israel. Canadian Jews have supported the Cuban Jewish community for decades, but according to one of the leaders of Havana's Jewish community, William Miller, this Canadian Jewish mission from Toronto was the first one to come to Cuba since 2019. That's 7 years ago. And now, with the travel warning, he fears it will dissuade others from coming.
We are still here, and we want to do our best in order to keep Judaism alive in Cuba, but we need our brothers and sisters from abroad in order to help us. And, well, it's a challenge. It's a challenge for us, and it will be a little bit worse in the following month.
I'm Ellen Besner, and this is what Jewish Canada sounds like for Monday, February 9th, 2026. Welcome to North Star, the flagship podcast of the Canadian Jewish News, made possible thanks to the generous support of the Ira Gluskin and Maxine Granovsky-Gluskin Charitable Foundation.
I'm just showing them that this is where we put prescriptions and all the serious medicine and hospital equipment and like for Foley, for catheter.
Wow.
The Canadians had a whirlwind itinerary in Havana. They attended Shabbat services. They danced at the Orthodox synagogue. They visited the elderly, toured the historic Ashkenazi cemetery, and, as you heard, dropped off their cargo of donated medical supplies at the free pharmaceutical dispensary inside Havana's main synagogue, also called Beth Shalom, but known locally as the Patronato. The mission went ahead despite intermittent power outages and terrible internet service, among other problems that make daily life hard for ordinary Cubans. Later, you'll hear about another aspect of this mission. The group brought 8 other duffel bags filled with baseball equipment collected by a Toronto teen for his bar mitzvah project. But first, let's bring in cantor Eric Moses and William Miller, a Jewish leader from Havana. Where am I finding you at the moment?
Well, we're on the bus in Havana at the highest point in the city where we have the best internet signal, and it's been quite an experience trying to detach from the obvious realities on the ground. But it's been exceptional to be here, and I'm very grateful to William for all of his efforts in putting us together with the Jewish community here.
Our listeners will be fascinated to hear who came with you and what was the purpose of your trip to Cuba.
So for many years, given that I come from a Latino background, my mother's a Mexican citizen, I've been taking groups to Mexico City, and many of my participants have said, well, why don't we do something new? And 18 years ago, I brought a mission to Havana, and some of those people that have come with me to Mexico asked, can we go to Havana with you? And it's been a long time, and many things have changed. We've been putting this together for months, and members of Beth Shalom Synagogue are here with me, 16 of us, very passionate to make a difference and to really solidify our identity with Am Yisrael Bekuba Chai.
Yes.
And William, can you tell us what outside missions do you get?
I have to say that this is the first group we are receiving here in Cuba after COVID. And that's the reason why we are more than happy to have them as part of us for at least a week. The situation in Cuba have been somehow difficult for the last few years. So taking our friends from Canada down to Cuba is a very good challenge and a very nice experience because at the end of the day, we have been close to each other for a very long time. Since 1961, the Canadian jury have been supporting Cuba. And now I think that Eric's group is making a difference by coming back again to Cuba and nowadays, which is not so during these difficult times.
What changed, Cantor Moses, from when you were last there?
Yeah, I have to be honest, the change is quite dramatic. Number one, the Jewish community is not getting younger. The young people are increasingly leaving because they can, because Aliyah is an option. The government allows you to leave. But number two, the conditions in the country are increasingly challenging. When we came in 2008 with many Toronto Jewish community leaders, we brought the list of supplies that was recommended to us by the Joint Distribution Committee, who was then on the ground here in Havana. They're no longer here on the ground, but William and other members of the community have really taken charge to make sure that they do everything in their power to perpetuate the Jewish community in Cuba, in Havana with the 3 synagogues, and more so to help the community and the broader community with essential supplies. And I mean, shelves are bare here. We brought Tylenol, aspirin, antibiotics, Band-Aids, toothpaste, toothbrush, anything, soap, anything we could get our hands on. William took us to his childhood home, which is in a very impoverished neighborhood. And we connected with a project that the Beth Shalom Patronato Synagogue supports called Círculo de Abuelos, which is a senior circle. And we were dancing with 40 other seniors that couldn't be more appreciative for our efforts just to be here and to identify with them.
Cantor Moses said that it's changed a lot since he was last there, but even in the last, since the Venezuela capture of Maduro, things have changed. Can you describe on a daily basis what we should know about life for the Jewish community or all Cubans since the beginning of the year?
The main difference is that Cuba have been dependent on the Venezuelan oil for a very long time. And at this point, we have not that oil. So blackouts, which is nothing new for Cuba, have been increased. But there is a difference still between a real Cuban or Cuban at the street and, the resorts, hotels. I think that so far you have electricity in every single resort. But again, the general population is not in the same position. I think that we have to be prepared for different times in here, which are going to be more difficult. Like Gary says, in Cuba, everything that you can bring to Cuba through groups like these would be more than helpful because at the end of the day, we need even an aspirin is hard to find in a pharmacy in Cuba. So it would be a life-saving donation for us at this point.
It's
Can
an
you-
eye-opening experience
Yeah,
to be
go
here.
ahead.
We went to lunch yesterday in a fantastic restaurant that had absolutely no power. So they brought us up the stairs with flashlights They cooked somehow behind the scenes with generators and served us on an open air terrace where there was daylight, so we could see what we were eating. This did not exist 18 years ago when I was here. When we're out for dinner in the evenings, the blackouts on the street will happen, and you'll hear it's like a bar mitzvah. You'll suddenly hear a cheer when the power goes out. I
Goes
guess it's
on. Goes
no, when
on.
it goes out,
Or when it goes out.
almost like when someone breaks a glass. It's counterintuitive that you cheer. And then hours later, maybe the power comes back on, and then you get like a double cheer. The basic necessities of life are so needed here. And the humanity of the people is so felt, and they care about each other so much. And the Jewish community is so determined to preserve what they've had. It's truly inspiring.
William, are your expatriates who are living in Miami able to send things back, or because they're in America, no?
Well, first of all, I think
Big
that
community in Miami. There's a big shul.
there is a big community in Miami, yes, but we are not so close with them because the politics are always in the middle. We can get more from Canada at this point than from our people in Miami, or even from the northern part of the U.S.
The cantor mentioned
So,
blackouts. What is happening? How does that impact services at the synagogue or at the schools? Can you tell us what that looks
no,
like?
having a power supply in every single place in this country at this point is a must. So it's in every single synagogue or restaurant or paladar or hotel needs to have a power supply.
Mhm.
So, and that's exactly what we have been preparing for, because we knew in advance that something like this can happen. So, at this point, for example, most of the synagogues, at least, we do have not such a big power supply, but at least a basic one in order to keep our services running.
But without the oil for the generators, how do you
So,
generate
we're
it?
talking about solar panels.
Oh,
This is a
solar
new
panels. Ah.
Yeah, that's something that is
Oh,
coming
okay.
into the island at this point because it's the only possibility. So we have to renovate all the technology that we already have, and we have to get updated to solar panels, which is going to be the next step.
I think the true message is something is going to have to give. This model is unsustainable moving forward for a lengthy period of time. You already feel it. Today, the president announced that the schools were going to be closed, that hospital surgeries were going to be canceled. That this just happened this morning. So even since we arrived on Tuesday, the situation has deteriorated. We were driving down the street and there's no public transportation. It's all been canceled. People are holding out wads of Cuban pesos and waving it at our bus as we drive by, hoping that we'll stop to pick them up because they have
Yep.
no way to get around the country. And it's really heartbreaking. And you want to help every single person that you see in the street, but it's just impossible to help everybody.
You brought a lot of medical supplies. Are you able to get kosher food? I know that the Canadian Jewish community in Toronto, UJA, sends a container for
Yes.
Passover every year. But is that enough
Yes.
for a whole year for your non-perishable food?
No, it's not. It's not enough for sure. We have been getting that kosher food from Canada for, as I said, since 1961. So we have been able to celebrate Pesach every single year in Cuba thanks to the Canadian jury, our friends from Canada. But I have to be honest, it's not enough for the whole year. Yeah, we may be working or we have to work soon in order to get some supplies for the rest of the year because the situation is somehow getting difficult per day.
Are there any other supplies that you can get from World Jewish Congress or the
The
Joint?
main coming resources into the community have been through missions, humanitarian and religious missions. As you can imagine now, almost everybody's afraid to come to Cuba, and we have to do our best in order to let you know that we're still here and we are still alive, and we need your help, and we need you also in Cuba, and that's a big challenge because. Whenever people are talking about Cuba, they are talking about not such a good things, and we are still here, and we want to do our best in order to keep Judaism alive in Cuba. But we need our brothers and sisters from abroad in order to help us.
And you didn't have any obstacles to counter when you were at the customs to bring all that stuff in? Everything was okay, or do you have to pay bribes or anything?
No, we did. Thankfully, no. Uh, First of all, I want to add something before I talk about customs. We had every possible opportunity to cancel this mission.
Yeah.
And William and I have been talking for 6 months about doing this. Thanks to William's determination and perseverance, it convinced me to speak to my people and say, although this may seem irresponsible at this juncture in time, Kol Yisrael Arivim Zelazeh. That's what it says. That every Jew, the nation of Israel, looks after each other. So I reached out to the people, the 16 people. A few people dropped out. We were more. And they said, we're in. We want to do it. And that's why we're here. Was it an obstacle to bring things in? Thanks to William again, he arranged for a letter from the community that we presented to customs. I was flagged because we came with 8 duffels of baseball equipment, 7 very large suitcases filled with medical supplies. And when they stopped me, I showed them the letter. One guy looked at it, hesitated, showed it to somebody else. She hesitated, finally nodded and said, okay, let them through. So I'm very grateful that all of this actually got here. WestJet arranged a humanitarian waiver and permitted us to bring extra luggage. Yesterday afternoon, we visited 2 elderly ladies from the Jewish community with no power in their homes. Their children, their grandchildren all live in Israel, and we brought them supplies. It was like manna from heaven. They could not thank us enough.
You said that their children and grandchildren live in Israel. Is there any anti-Semitism that is happening because of the Israel-Palestine war, the Gaza war?
So Cuba have been pro-Palestine for the whole history, but they can make a difference in between the Jewish people and what is happening in Israel. And so I think that one of the only places in the world where you can get into a synagogue without showing your passport in advance or getting a permission is Cuba. So you can still have access to all the synagogues in Havana without not even a previous notice. So we're still living like that. We have not an anti-Semitic issue happening in Cuba recently, even after October the 7th.
That's a good thing for the people from Toronto to get a little break from it.
Cantor Eric has been wearing a kippah all the time, and that you have
No issues.
When you brought the baseball equipment, where is this sports stuff going to go?
So it's going to the patronato today. We do have some teams here in Cuba who have been trained in order to attend the Maccabi games in Israel. So we are going to use the baseball stuff that Mission brought into Cuba in order to support them.
And perhaps joining the Blue Jays in the future.
Yep.
Never know.
Well,
the next
that's
Blue Jay
right.
may be coming from Havana.
And William, what else can you say before we go? I know this was a large mission, but are people still coming like a family of 4 and they're bringing like independently, an extra bag of school supplies or what have you? Is that still happening in Cuba? I know people used to do that.
Yes. There are people coming, even in a family trip, and they're still bringing stuff into the community in general. What is happening with Canadians in the past is too much about Varadero and all the resorts in the Keys and everything. And it is important for us to let the people in Canada know that we are still here. We do have synagogues, and you are more than welcome. So we are part of a big family. Whatever you are thinking about coming to Cuba, you can enjoy the beach and the sun in Varadero, but just 2 hours away, we are here waiting also for our friends to visit us and to attend service and to be part of the community for at least for a Shabbat dinner.
Honestly, anything you can do to help these incredible people, it's the greatest mitzvah.
So we need medical supplies. What else do you need? What do they need? Batteries.
Solar-powered lights.
So, yes, exactly. Solar panels is going to be...
That's a long-term project.
Step. So it's something like we'll be dependent.
Flashlights that are solar-powered, for example, very helpful. I mean, you're living 12 hours a day in a blackout. We're insulated from that because we're staying at a nice hotel. But the reality on the ground is, and what William has tried to impart to us, is that there's what we're seeing through a tourist lens, and then what really happens for the local Cuban.
We'll be in touch, and thank you for telling us this really important story. Kol hakavod.
Thank you.
13-year-old Bialik Hebrew Day School student Benji Tak couldn't take time off school for a week to go to Cuba and ensure the safe delivery of his bar mitzvah project. Benji plays double-A ball in Toronto. He said it was a natural fit when Cantor Moses told him how Cubans can't easily get baseball gear due to the U.S. embargo on trade. Benji is a catcher. He collected 16 catcher's masks, 20 pairs of shin pads and chest protectors, 15 gloves, 4 nets, 7 backpacks, 2 pairs of cleats, 81 bats, and 50 baseballs. WestJet issued a humanitarian waiver for his donations and let them load the unaccompanied bags onto Cantor Moses' group's flight to Varadero. He joins me with his father, Sean Tak. How did you decide that you wanted to help the people of the Jewish community of Cuba with sports equipment?
For my bar mitzvah, my parents told me I needed to come up with like a charity bar mitzvah project that I should do, because your bar mitzvah is not just like about getting presents and reading from the Torah, but like it's about doing a mitzvah and giving back. So I thought about it, and with the help from Cantor Moses, I realized I really like sports. I'm passionate about baseball. So I talked about it with him, and he told me about how he had connections with someone in Cuba, and that if I could collect baseball equipment or other stuff to do with baseball and send it to Cuba, he had connections with someone who could make it happen and give it to people there.
Tell me about how this started. Like, did you play on a baseball team? Did you ask your friends from it? Like, how did you get all this stuff?
So I play on a baseball team, North Toronto AA. So I had my dad, who is the coach, send out like an email in the team chat to ask anyone if they had any used baseball equipment that was too small. And I asked my friends on the team and who also play baseball at my school if they had. And since my dad was the coach, he came in contact with one of the people who work for North Toronto organization named Dora Chow. She's like the leader or something, like
Convener, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I drafted an email, and with their help, we were able to send it to like all the people who play with North Toronto affiliated teams. And but the vast majority of the equipment came from a girls' softball league in Toronto. They were getting new equipment, but the old equipment was perfectly fine. It was just they needed new equipment. So we got more than 50% of the equipment from them, and we were able to collect it from them.
What is in the duffel bags that you got that went to Cuba?
We made a spreadsheet, but we have bats, gloves, catcher's gloves, batting helmets, multiple sets of catcher's gear, baseballs, batting gloves, and we also collected a bunch of like baseball jerseys and clothes. But some of that stuff we gave to a clothing drive here in Toronto. We didn't send it in the duffel bag.
Each duffel bag, we weighed it carefully to make sure we were under the limit. So each duffel bag was just under 50 pounds. So I think each duffel bag probably had about 15 baseball bats. Some had some netting to be used for batting practice. Some had bases or home plates that were included.
So you could do like a couple of teams there for sure, plus a whole catcher school. A lot of catching stuff happening. That's kind of unusual, but that's what you got, right? Did you know anything before you started this project about Cuba?
I knew a couple things about Cuba, but I didn't know there was a lot of Jews in Cuba. I only figured that out. So I did some research, and I found out that Cuba has a very large Jewish community. And I knew some stories, like the ship, the St. Louis, during the Holocaust, but I didn't know that a lot of Jews went, and I discovered that.
Have you guys ever been on holidays to Cuba?
No.
I have, but it was about 24 years ago, so I don't think that counts anymore.
This past week, the Canadian government changed its travel advisories for Canadians who want to go to Cuba. You saw that, right? So when your stuff is on its way at the same time with a medicine and all this stuff, how does that sit with you guys? How did you feel about when you saw that?
I mean, obviously, I think we take a lot for granted here. And one of the things that we probably take for granted is the ability or the opportunities that our kids have, that they're lucky enough to have, to play sports, to have these leisure activities. And I think, packing it all up and bringing it to the airport and then seeing that news come out just reinforces how important this mitzvah project ended up being. A, it's hard for them to get it there, but B, once they have it, maybe it helps someone kind of escape all of the things that they're dealing with, at least for a little bit. And, they get to be like a kid for a few hours.
And what about you, Benji, when you saw this news come out about it's not so safe to go there for Canadians?
Like, it's obviously sad, but I feel like it's perfect. Like, I hate to say it, but it's pretty good timing because along with the baseball stuff, there is a lot of medicine, there's batteries. So it's really sad. At least now I know some people there, and I hope a lot more are bringing stuff that can help the people in Cuba, because in Canada, while that a bottle of Tylenol might not be that valuable to us, it could be way more valuable to the people in Cuba with all of the stuff that's going on.
Right. So Did you guys go to the games and try to get the Blue Jays involved in any of this or no?
We were joining them for their run last year from the stands.
In October, right. Well, I'm sure when they hear this or see it, if they do, they'll be very happy to see that. So what's next now? You did this. It took you almost the whole year. All your friends must be, now how do you top that? Is there anything I didn't ask you want our listeners and viewers to understand about what doing this project has meant for you?
I think for me, I think it's important, to, show Benji that coming up with a plan, doing some research, putting out the appeal, sticking with it diligently to get the waivers, to get the bags there. It's a lesson in finishing something that you've started. And B, it's a lesson in how, you can help others, even when it seems like they're really hundreds or thousands of miles away. You can still have an impact.
Well said.
For me, at times it was really hard, and I didn't I thought sometimes it wasn't I didn't think it was going to actually happen, because the internet, you might know, in Cuba is not very good. People don't have access to it all the time, like in Canada. So it was very hard to have contact with him. And we even had to consider, we were sort of starting to make a backup plan at the end of the summer. And you talked about the Jays. My mom came up with the idea to give it to, if we weren't able to, if the trip to Cuba didn't go through, we were considering, we might give it to Jays Care, because it's here in Toronto, and they also help lots of underprivileged youth, and they could have also used it really well, but thankfully we were able to get it to Cuba.
Congratulations. Happy belated bar mitzvah.
Thank you.
And when does your practices start for your ball team this summer? Soon?
They've already started.
Oh, they've already started. Okay. And you're the coach again this year, Sean?
No, I've retired.
You're retired.
Okay. I hung up my cleats. I went out on top as a 1988 T-ball champs when I was 8 years old, and just stopped playing after that.
Thanks for joining us on the CJN's North Star podcast. Great to meet you.
Thanks, you too.
And that's what Jewish Canada sounded like for this episode of North Star, thanks to the generous support of the Ira Gluskin and Maxine Granovsky-Gluskin Charitable Foundation. UJA Federation of Greater Toronto supports the Cuban Jewish community. Every Passover, through the Global Seder campaign, they send a cargo container of kosher for Passover food and non-perishable supplies. Officials say this year's container will be packed in Toronto in the coming weeks. To donate or to find out more, you can go to the links in our show notes or watch the videos on our YouTube channel of the Cuban Jewish community and the trip. North Star is produced by Zachary Kauffman. Michael Fraiman is the executive producer, and Alicia Richler is our editorial director. The theme was by Brett Higgins. Thanks for listening.